Hey everybody, it's Gypsy. Well, tomorrow is my big day. Today is April 27th, 2023. And tomorrow I go and see my orthopedic doctor, and he's going to do x-rays. And if all looks well, he's going to give me permission to start weight bearing and start working on walking again. So I'm really, really excited about this. I have not taken a step since January 31st. Um, I'm excited. Please excuse those cats. See, it's morning and they've got a lot of energy. Anyways, I think that was, oh, Draig Arianan. Draco and Rhiannon, yeah, that was Welsh. Anyways, um, so I'm nervous about it because I have never experienced such profound pain in all my life as when I fractured my tibia plateau. And to me, in my opinion, it is worse than natural childbirth. Anyway, that's why I'm nervous about walking again. I have only been using my right leg for 3 months now. Well, at the beginning, I wasn't even walking. I mean, I was not even using my right leg. Anyways, today I wanted to explain what happened, how I broke my tibia plateau. So, anyways, I was having a normal day in central New Mexico where I have property, and I was living in my travel trailer. And I was building up this property to be a homestead. And I don't know what they're doing. I'm afraid to look. You guys probably saw behind me, huh? And I was just about that week, I was going to go, this was on a Tuesday night. On Friday, I believe, I was going to go town and buy what I needed to start the foundation of a tiny house for myself, a tiny cabin. I was all excited about that. And it was January 31st. I spent the day beginning to build a catio for my cats. And it was a normal day. Evening came around. I put my Great Pyrenees Sirius on his tie out. I went in the house. I made dinner. And after dinner, I took out an ice cream container and was having a couple spoonfuls of ice cream. So all of a sudden, I hear Sirius giving his alarm bark. He has certain barks. He was telling me something was wrong, and he was out there going nuts. I'm sorry if the camera's shaking. Anyways, so I go out there to see what's wrong. Normally, when there's something going on he wants to tell me about, and I come out and look, and I see what he's looking at, he gets all excited because to him he did a good job. So anyways, I go out there, and here, I guess somebody was looking for their dog. They were driving around in their car. People we don't know, which was upsetting to him because he's very protective. He's a gentle giant. He's got a soft heart, but he takes his guard duties seriously. So I went out there and I saw this car. It was driving down the road and like circled around the road. And Sirius was showing me. So the way he shows me is he'll run in the direction very excitedly of what he wants to show me. So I look over, I see this car, and it just dawned on me, like I saw out of the corner of my eye, I had his tie out attached to the bumper of the trailer. And I saw it was going around this way, and I thought, uh-oh, because Sirius passed in front of me. And I went, holy shit. And I looked over, and I see the tie out coming at me. Great Pyrenees run very fast. They're very strong dogs. And he wasn't even full grown yet. Now he pretty much is. It caught my legs. I couldn't get out of the way in time. It caught my legs. I went up into the air and flipped. So what happened was, as I hit the ground, well, the way my brain and my spirit work in conjunction with each other, I have always had the ability to erase my memory temporarily in order to cope with what needed to be dealt with at the moment. And this is what happened that night. I heard my bone crack. I mean, it was loud and it was a disgusting sound. I looked down at my left leg and my thigh was normal, but at the knee, my calf of my shin was going out this way, and my kneecap was on the side, facing out. I started to feel nauseous, I remember, and I looked away. Now, I believe the reason I had to remove that memory was because I was outside my trailer and my phone was inside the trailer on the table. And so I needed to get myself help. Now, what also happened was Sirius, being so upset about this stranger, he was on his tie out. He had such a good run that he went over the fence with his tie out on. So he's caught, and he was more my biggest concern than myself at the time. So I had to figure out how to get me and my dog help. So I had to take that sound and that image away. It took a very, very long time, but I had to roll over on my stomach and use my forearms to scooch to my trailer. Then when I got to my trailer, I had to flip over on my back. And I thankfully my trailer's so small, I only had one stop, and my yard is flat. So I was low enough to the ground, which was a blessing for me. I cannot remember how I got my door open. The only thing I can think of is that somehow I got my gulu up on the first step, and I reached up and opened the door, and then I pulled myself up into the trailer. How I closed the door, I don't know, because I had to, because my 3 cats were in the trailer and I didn't want them getting out. It was dusk at this time, and we have a lot of coyotes, and Sirius was not in a position to protect the cats. So somehow I got that door closed, and I don't know how. I have no idea how I did it because I was in such pain. My left leg was like it was paralyzed. I couldn't use it at all. I could feel the pain. The pain was excruciating, but it didn't function. It was very heavy. It wouldn't do anything, and I could not put not even the slightest bit of weight. It was horrible. So anyways, I got into the trailer and I scooched over on my butt or my back to my table, and I reached up with my left arm and I felt around until I found my phone. Now, I looked down and my leg was straight. I think trying to get from the yard into the trailer, put my leg straight and my kneecap in the front. But at this point, by the time I got into the trailer, my mind had totally erased the memory of that sound and the way my leg was bent. And so I had convinced myself that I probably just knocked my kneecap out of place, which I know is painful. So I called for help. My friend, she came, and I told her the first thing I want you to do is help Sirius, because I explained what happened to him. So she came and did that, and it wasn't easy because she's a skinny little thing and I'm not. She helped get me up onto my dinette bench seat. I found that sitting like that with my knee bent took the pressure off, and I felt better that way. And so we were discussing what to do. Now, I had totally convinced myself that it was just a dislocated kneecap. And I thought, well, I'm going to wait, see if it'll go back in by itself. So I called my son. He's like, Mom, I think you should go to the hospital just to make sure it's not something worse. I said, oh, no, I'm fine, because the way I was sitting had taken the pressure off. If I made the slightest move, I would scream in pain. So, that should have been a clue, but I had myself so convinced it wasn't a big deal. And then I have a friend who lives in Arizona, and you know, he's like 10 years older than I'm, something like that. 8 years, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, he says, when I was about your age and I hurt my back, I did the same thing and ignored it, thinking it was nothing. And now look at all the problems I have. He goes, you better get yourself to at least a doctor or the hospital. So it was late, it was dark. For me to call 911 would have been difficult because I live in the middle of the high desert on a llano in the middle of nowhere. Although I have an address, it was a brand new address, not yet registered in the GPS. They would have had trouble finding me. So I thought, all right, I'm going to wait till morning and see what happens. Well, obviously, I really didn't get any sleep that night. I was like crying and screaming all night in pain. So about 4:30 in the morning, I thought, I have to do something. I said, even if it is just a dislocated kneecap, I need to go to the hospital and have them put it back in place or whatever. Now, I remember thinking that it might be broke. Now, when I think broken bone, you put a cast on it for 6 weeks, you take it off, and you start walking again. But my family and spirit was around, and my dad is kind of whispering in my ear, you might need surgery. I thought, no, I didn't really hear because I'm in so much pain. I'm having trouble registering what, physical people are saying. I didn't hear that. No, that can't be possible. Now, the thing with me is all my life, sorry about the shaking, all my life, whenever I've had a health issue, even if it was a serious one, it ended up not being as serious as they thought because I always heal so well and so quickly. Even from the time I was born, I was my left leg again, a dislocated hip. So I was born congenital dislocated hip. They put me in a body cast until I was 6 months old. They found it when I was 6 weeks. Go into a body cast, armpits to toes. And my parents were told afterwards I would need a brace. Well, I get out of the cast at 6 months, and they're like, wow, she healed so well, she doesn't need the brace. The worst thing that happened with that is, one, I didn't walk until I was 15 months old because it put me behind in walking. And then at the age of 12, I started to suffer bursitis in that hip. So that was a young age to start. But it was the worst that happened. And then when in my early 50s in that hip, I was diagnosed with mild OA. That is how well my body heals. So that's what I'm used to. I'm used to always getting better news than what was originally said. So the whole thing was too much for me. So what happened in the wee hours of the morning before the sun came up was we had to gather some people from the llano. Two of the guys had to carry me out of my trailer and put me in my friend's car to get me to the ER. And that took a long time. I was afraid because the pain was so bad and I was kind of crying and screaming. So finally get into the car, get to the ER. I went to the ER in Socorro. And they did x-rays, which the positions they had to put me in, oh my God, were so painful. So the ER doctor comes in and he says, well, you broke your tibia plateau. I said, okay. My first thought was cast for 6 weeks and then I'm good to go. So he said, what is going to happen is, he goes, it looks like you're going to need surgery. He said, so I am going to put you in one of those inflatable leg brace things and send you home on crutches and set you up with an orthopedic surgeon because you're going to have to schedule surgery. And I was like, well, why not a cast? And he says, there are varying degrees of how this injury happens. He says, some are just a simple fracture and people don't need surgery. And then you have where it's a worse injury, and then you need surgery. He says, your bones need to be put back together. And I said, okay. And he goes, now I'm going to take care of all this for you so you don't have to do anything. I'm going to send your x-rays up to the orthopedic surgeon in Rio Rancho, and we'll set an appointment for you. And I said, okay. So right there, I went from thinking it was a dislocated kneecap to being told, well, I broke my tibia plateau. And then I went from thinking, well, a cast for 6 weeks, then I'm good to go. Then he tells me I need surgery. So he tells me, he's going to set me up and everything. I said, okay. About 5-10 minutes later, he comes back in the room and he goes, well, plans have changed. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, the orthopedic surgeon in the hospital up in Rio Rancho saw your x-rays. He said, surgery immediately, like this morning. He says he's ready for you right now, and we need to get you up there. And I was like, what? I'm not used to that. I'm used to, oh, it's not that bad. You look good, or you're healing great. That's what I'm used to. So, all of this, by the time it happened, I fell in the evening of January 31st. This was happening February 1st in the morning. So what happened was, it's a long distance from Socorro to Rio Rancho. They put me in a helicopter after drugging me up with fentanyl and morphine, stuff like that, because the slightest little move, vibration, hurts like hell when you have a broken limb, whether it be your arms or your legs. So anyways, they got me up there. They got me into pre-op immediately. I mean, there was, no pass and go. Straight from the helicopter to pre-op. They started prepping me for surgery. I called my son, etc., my ex-husband. And they didn't. Now, the surgeon came in pre-op. And he says, okay, this is what's going to happen. He says, I'm going to insert a metal plate in your leg. I said, will that be there for the rest of my life? He said, yes. And he says, there is a good chance you will get post-traumatic osteoarthritis and then need a knee replacement at some point. I said, okay. So he said, I'm going to put a plate in. You're going to have a scar on your leg about this big. He says, after surgery, you are to be non-weight bearing for 6 weeks. I said, okay. And he says, you'll have physical therapy and all this. He told me his plan. So I go into surgery early afternoon. I thought, hour and a half for surgery. I get out of surgery and I look at the time and it's 6:30. I was like, damn, that took a long time. The surgeon comes in. And again, I hear, well, things have changed. The plan has changed. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, well, when I looked at, because he did right before I went into surgery. Like I went from pre-op to have an MRI, I think it was, some kind of scan, and then right into the operating room. He said, when I saw the scans and opened your leg up, things were much worse than x-rays were showing. He said, not only did you fracture your tibia plateau, your knee joint slammed together and your tibia shattered. He said, I had to spend a long time pulling out shards of bone. He said one was like really big. And he says, then I had to take what I'm going to call bone glue and glue your leg together. I had to reconstruct your tibia. And then I had to put on the plate. And he said, now because of all of this, he goes, I had to put on a much longer plate, much bigger plate. He said, so your surgical scar has gone from this to twice the size it goes down your leg. And I've shown you guys that. And I said, okay. And he said, plus, and this is where I got really depressed. He says, you will now be, we've gone from, before I told you 6 weeks non-weight bearing. He says it's going to have to be a full 12 weeks. And with 12 weeks, I'm drugged up stuff, and I'm trying to figure out 12 weeks is what? How many months? And he goes, 3 months. I said, you got to be kidding me. And he said, and with the lifestyle that you lead, off grid, having to go get your water and the the 250 gallon totes and jump up up and down off my flatbed trailer and transfer water and stuff like that. And it's not like it's a physically um, it's a lot of physical work to live like that. And with the gardening and building and stuff, he goes, I don't even want you so much as gardening for at least a year. And I was like, what? I went into shock. I mean, I couldn't believe it because I'm not used to this. Because like I said, things were always better than what they originally thought. This was a total opposite. So, that was my first day. The first 24 hours, because when I got out of surgery, I think it had been about 24 hours since I fell. So that's what happened with that. I'm going to try to go into more detail from that point because it was a huge life changer. In an instant, my life changed. And although it's only a temporary disability, sort of, I'll be able to walk again, but I was told my knee is my left leg, I mean, it was a must to begin with when I was born, but now things are worse, and they said it is gonna be a lifelong problem because of the severity of the injury. It was worse than your typical tibia plateau fracture. And I believe, one, my dog was running very fast, so the force of that flip and coming back down, plus several years ago, I had menopause at 50. I was diagnosed with osteopenia, and I have not had a bone density test done since. So it's probably that had a lot to do with it. And what my occupational therapist explained to me recently, he says, now I told you what you have in your favor is your age. And he says, what I mean by that is you're not 80 or 90 years old. So your chances of walking again, you're going to walk again. He says, however, and I said, okay, this is where my age comes into play. He says, yeah. He says, a man in their 50s or 60s, their bones are like one of those long fluorescent light tubes. You can't break those things. He says, most men are like that. He says, a woman at your age, their bones are like empty beer bottles. You drop it, it shatters. And he says, that's what happened to you. So I do want to have my primary care doctor set me up for another bone density test to see where I am with that. Because I think, I know I have osteopenia. It's probably worse over the years. But anyways, I'm going to go into more detail with my journey on this. And yeah. So that's what happened the first 24 hours. And I will tell you the next part, I was always drugged up. The pain is so intense. They keep you drugged up. I was just recently, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, weaned off the oxy. Now I will take it every once in a great while. I will be taking a very small dose before physical therapy from now on, since I will be weight bearing and learning how to walk again. It's going to be painful, so I'll probably take like 5 milligrams. And if that doesn't work, 10, like an hour before physical therapy. So anyways, that's the first 24 hours. That's how I broke my tibia plateau. So yeah, wish me luck tomorrow. I see no reason why he would refuse me weight bearing, because I think I'm doing good. I think I'm healing well. So anyways, I'm going to leave you with that. Blessed be, and make it a joyful